Hi everyone, this is Ukraine today. Ukrainian warriors have failed Russia's attempt to break through into Konstantinivka in the Donetsk region. The invaders tried to use the fog as cover but ended up in a trap themselves. Yet another Kremlin lie. There is no breakthrough on the front. The Ukrainian armed forces have retreated to more favorable positions in the Zaporizhia region and stopped the enemy. Russians are bringing military equipment into Pokrovsk and setting up mortars. The weather is on their side, the fog is hampering our drone operators. Due to huge losses, Putin has secretly launched a new wave of mobilization. The occupiers shelled civilians and infrastructure in Kharkiv and Mirnograd. But revenge didn't take long. Ukrainian good drones struck back, setting a Russian petrochemical plant ablaze. Russia may soon attack one of the European countries. The Kremlin has already started an information campaign to prepare its citizens. Putin planned a series of terrorist attacks in Kyiv. Let's talk about all this in detail. It's November 12th. My name is Sima Sholenko and we're getting started. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. And please, guys, in the comments, tell us which city and country you're watching from and if you stand with Ukraine in our fight against the occupiers. Your support means a lot to us. Ukrainian warriors foiled a Russian assault on Konstantinivka, Donetsk region. The occupiers tried to use thick fog to sneak into the city and its outskirts, pulling in a large number of troops. But Ukrainian intelligence units spotted their movements in time and hit them hard. Soldiers of the 28th Separate Mechanized Brigade said the fog became a trap for the Russians themselves. They did not see where it came from, and we worked clearly and purposefully. Meanwhile, the defense forces of the SO reported that Ukrainian units withdrew from Rivnopilya in the Zaporizhia region to more advantageous defensive lines. Despite Russian propaganda about a breakthrough, the enemy's advance was stopped. Nearly 100 occupiers were neutralized there in just one day. In Pokrovsk, Russians are bringing in more equipment and setting up mortar positions. The fog over the city makes drone reconnaissance impossible, and the enemy is shelling Ukrainian drone operator positions. Fierce battles continue. Ukrainian troops keep eliminating hundreds of invaders near Pokrovsk. More details on the Zaporizhia front next in our report.
Pokrovsk is on the brink. Fighting there is non-stop and the Russians are shelling the city with every weapon they have by.
Ukraine's defense forces are holding on to the high-rise district. It is precisely the use of high-rise buildings that allows Ukraine's defense forces to significantly improve their tactical positions. Moreover, the intensity of strikes on the positions of Ukraine's defense forces in the Pokrovsk direction using glide bombs reaches up to 200 to 300 per day. In addition, the occupiers' tactic is so-called combined attacks, that is using both glide bombs and accordingly heavy flamethrower systems.
It is reported that the defense forces managed to loosen the enemy's encirclement in the Pokrovsk pocket, which allowed Ukrainian defenders to catch their breath.
Logistics are in place. Ukraine's defense forces are conducting active combat operations, not allowing the occupiers to gain a foothold on the outskirts of this settlement. The situation in the Pokrovsk direction is difficult, but at the moment, Ukraine's defense forces are carrying out stabilization measures to prevent further advances by Russian occupation troops.
Syrskyi reports that Russia has redeployed 150,000 troops and plans to encircle Pokrovsk and neighboring towns.
In parallel with Pokrovsk, the occupiers are sharply intensifying combat operations in the Lyman direction. There, the enemy grouping numbers about 90,000 personnel. So, as we can see, they are trying to attack in several directions at once in order to capture territory. In the Donetsk region, which is controlled by Ukraine's defense forces.
But how many Russians will die for these towns doesn't really bother the bunker grandpa. But a Russian blogger still decided to speak out. And
for just two small towns, Russia has already killed its own soldiers. Russia has killed 80 to 100,000 people. Let me say it again. It wasn't Ukraine that killed them, it was Russia that killed them.
well, of course, what's 100,000 people, right? Putin surely knows what he's doing. Or does he just not care?
During World War II, when Germany was invading and capturing Norway, France, and Poland, it actually lost fewer people than Russia has for these two little towns.
The commander-in-chief of the armed forces reported that Russia is preparing a final maneuver aimed at capturing the entire Donetsk region.
They plan, after possibly capturing Pokrovsk, to transfer all operational reserves, let me emphasize again, that's about 170,000 troops, to seize the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration. This is what the Russian military command is planning. In other words, the fighting in Pokrovsk is effectively nullifying the efforts of the Russian occupation army to take control at this moment of areas in the Donetsk region.
Nevertheless, Z channels are publishing videos of Russian soldiers entering Pokrovsk. Strangely enough, after 4 years of war, in this case they are thanking the fog. But just as they entered, they were killed. Apparently, fog is not a very reliable ally. Ukrainian soldiers are not giving an inch to the Russians and are eliminating them one by one.
There have been significant tactical successes in the Rodinsky area. The settlement has been completely cleared, and considering its strategic importance, it's a key logistical route that passes through this settlement. It is now under the control of Ukraine's defense forces. Ukraine's defense forces are conducting successful counter-offensive operations in the area of the settlement of Shakov.
Apparently, because of this, Russia has begun a mass recruitment of volunteers to guard important facilities from drones. But we know very well where these volunteers will end up soon. In
the decree signed by the Russian dictator regarding the recruitment of so-called reservists to guard strategic facilities on the territory of the Russian Federation, according to the Russian side itself, there are certain loopholes that allow the use of these individuals. The operational reserve is being used to replenish personnel directly on the front line of contact. In fact, this is a covert mobilization taking place on the territory of the Russian Federation.
Meanwhile, in Russia itself, as always, things are heating up. This time, friendly drones paid a visit to the oil refinery in Saratov. Envy and silence, as they say. The main thing is so much admiration.
Envy and silence while I stand by the window. It exploded. Hey everyone, look. Over there.
Russia dropped a FAB-3000 aerial bomb on Mirnograd, Donetsk region near Pokrovsk. About 1,500 civilians remain trapped in the city with no communication and no way to evacuate. The occupiers are literally wiping the city off the map. Due to massive losses, the Russian army is exhausted. Putin's generals keep sending troops into mid assaults, and the country has now secretly started a new mobilization wave, conscripting people under the pretense of security jobs as strategic facilities.
The Ukrainian armed forces are eliminating a huge number of occupiers in Pokrovsk and in Rodinske, a key settlement that supports the entire Pokrovsk-Mirnorod agglomeration from the east. Ukrainian tank crews have crushed the Russian invaders to rubble.
Reports like these from Pokrovsk, the hottest spot in Donbas, are coming in almost daily. October has already become the bloodiest month for the Russian forces since the beginning of the war. However, it seems that November will break even this record. The colossal efforts of the defense forces have resulted in record losses for Russia and, as a consequence, a new wave of mobilization, which for now remains covert.
This term should be understood to mean several things. It refers to the recruitment of conscripts for contract service, as well as the enlistment of reservists to guard important facilities, which the Russians have announced in many regions. This is a sign that the current flow of contract soldiers in Russia has decreased. The recruitment of foreigners also does not compensate for the losses in combat.
The Ukrainian Center for Countering Disinformation claims that Pokrovsk has become the site of incredible Russian losses. According to reports from Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky, in the attempt to occupy this city, more than 30,000 occupiers have already lost their lives, and their number is growing every day.
The fact that Pokrovsk has turned into yet another meat grinder for the Russian occupiers is undeniable. And in general, no one is hiding the fact that the concept, not the strategy, of Ukraine's defense forces is to maximize, to wear down the enemy's offensive potential as much as possible, to inflict maximum damage so that they lack the strength to continue and expand their offensive, so that these infiltrations do not turn into breakthroughs of our defenses.
As always, the Kremlin has decided to solve the issue through deception. Officially, they are not announcing a mobilization, but in reality, they are rounding up literally everyone the security forces and the military can get their hands on.
What does this draft signify? Hellish raids that ignore all deferments, all supporting documents, basically anything at all. And these hellish raids are happening not only in Moscow, but now also in the regions. There are already reports of raids in Kazan and Khabarovsk. This is alarming, this is bad, because it's one thing to have raids in Moscow and Makhachkala, but it's another thing entirely when raids are happening in major cities with millions of residents. This means that now they will simply cover the entire territory as best they can, with police officers who will be rounding up all men of conscription age wherever they are.
At the same time, the previous rule that conscripts do not fight at the front has been left in the past. Now, the announced year-round draft provides the army with a constant influx of people, first and foremost for recruitment. And by the way, this recruitment is universally coercive.
This means signing contracts under pressure, let's say emotional pressure. When conscripts are called up, they end up in the barracks. And there is still a lot of hazing in the Russian army to this day. Here, we've already forgotten what that's like. So you can put pressure on this recruit and force him to sign a contract that way. And then he is no longer a conscript, but a contract soldier. And as is well known, under Russian law, contract soldiers can be sent directly to the front lines.
Russian human rights activists say that the methods in Russia haven't changed, but the scale of such contract signings has increased dramatically. If before these were local initiatives, now the order has come from above. The goal is to forcibly keep as many people in the army as possible. So,
this hidden mobilization continues. It never really started. I repeat, it never actually ended. It has been going on since the fall of 2022. This is just its new phase.
Another method invented by the Russian military machine is to call up reservists to guard strategic facilities. Analysts explain, the scheme is designed for the gradual deployment to the front of everyone who has ever been connected to the army. At first, these reservists will replace the current convoys whose fate is already sealed.
In this way, the state can take contract soldiers who are currently in Region N, send them to the front, and instead regularly rotate reservists to take their place. 2 months, 2 months, 2 months. So essentially, for these training camps that they will conduct for reservists, specifically for guarding these.
And after several rotations, it will be those very reservists who are sent to the front, and if there's time, they will undergo field training. If Russian losses do not decrease, the briefing will take place right on the bus on the way to the war. Putin needs an uninterrupted supply of cannon fodder.
The enemy has thrown literally everything they have at Pokrovsk, but they continue to suffer such devastating losses there that even a numerical advantage of up to 20 times in some areas does not allow them to take control of this city.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now. The terrorist state once again struck Kharkiv, hitting residential areas and civilian infrastructure with Shahed drones. According to Mayor Igor Terechov, 3 drones hit a civilian enterprise and residential buildings. In response, Ukraine's Special Operation Forces launched a deep strike against the Stavrolin petrochemical plant in Budyonnovsk, Russian Stavropol region. The facility produces components for Russian military equipment and drone pods. Each new Russian attack on Ukraine's energy grid now triggers retaliatory strikes inside Russia targeting oil refineries, power plants and key military industrial facilities.
More and more Russian cities are plunging into darkness. If Russians attack the Ukrainian energy system, Ukraine will attack the Russian one. The Ukrainian authorities warned about this, and the defense forces have demonstrated it clearly.
The roof was blown off.
For example, this is what the Voronezh CHP plant looks like now. It was attacked on November 9th. Reports say there were at least 3 hits. After the explosions, part of the city was left without electricity.
Voronezh is quite a significant city. There are a lot of enterprises in Voronezh that work for the military, including electronics. There are aviation enterprises there, both military and civilian.
This is exactly the difference between Russian and Ukrainian strikes on the energy system. In addition to a deserved response, the goal of the Ukrainian defenders is to plunge into darkness those energy infrastructure facilities that support the operation of Russia's defense industry.
It serves a dual purpose. First, to really show Russia that it's not only them who can do this, we can also respond in kind to certain things. And really try to stop their machine to the best of your ability and actively work to undermine the powerful and deeply entrenched military-industrial complex that is, at this very moment, actively working against us in this war.
I think this trend will continue. At first glance, it may seem like pecking away at the liver of the Russian energy system, but gradually, various elements of the infrastructure will be knocked out. At first glance, it might just seem satisfying that somewhere in Belgorod or Voronezh, people had to sit without electricity. But let's think about it. In some ways, the configuration of the Russian energy system might be similar to ours, in that the same power lines can supply not only the residential sector, but also, for example, industry and railway transport.
That's why none of these attacks are random. The goal is not just to respond, but to respond painfully, so that the facilities supplying the military-industrial enterprises of the aggressor country can no longer fuel the Kremlin's ambitions.
When various elements of the integrity of Russia's energy system are gradually undermined, it primarily means that somewhere a train carrying something the Rashists need for the war will stop, or there will be rolling blackouts at a factory producing goods important to Russia.
And according to experts, not all such enterprises are located deep in the rear. Many facilities are located not far from the Ukrainian border. For example, strategic Tu-95 MS bombers are repaired in Taganrog, and one of the manufacturers of components for the Russian missile program, specifically solid fuel for Iskanders, is located just 150 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. It is entirely possible to plunge them into electrical darkness. There are undoubtedly such important facilities for the Russian military-industrial complex in the Moscow region, and let's be honest, in Moscow itself.
I think the psychological effect of plunging Moscow into complete darkness would be much more effective than, say, restoring a few factories there, because it is precisely this main mass of people, this so-called office plankton, who live off the regions, who will ultimately realize that something is happening, and that something truly needs to be done.
In this way, Ukraine will kill not 2, but 3 birds with one stone. A fair response, the paralysis of Russian military-industrial facilities, and psychological pressure on the Kremlin. Sounds like the perfect target for the next blackout.
Ukraine is becoming a true drone superpower. Every year, Kyiv produces over 4 million drones of various types, compared to just 100,000 made in the United States. According to Rand analyst Michael Bonnert, it's not just about quantity. Ukraine's drones variety likely exceeds that of all NATO countries combined. Ukrainian manufacturers are expanding in Europe, opening production sites in Slovakia, Denmark, the UK and Finland to meet future NATO needs. Meanwhile, the Kremlin is eyeing new targets. Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov claimed that Europe is preparing for war with Russia as defense budgets grow. What he forgot to mention is Russia's invasion of Ukraine that forced Europe to rearm to defend itself and support Ukraine.
Putin said that Europe is preparing for war with Russia. We see this and are preparing for it in turn.
Our vision coincides. There really are such strong militaristic sentiments in European countries. They are pushing for further increases in military budgets. Some countries, such as Poland, have already brought them up to 5%. We have always understood that such a danger exists. Therefore, we took all measures to ensure our interests and security in advance.
Ukraine's allies continue to stand firm. Poland will soon deliver new weapons to the front. We will tell you what exactly is on the way and how it will surprise the occupiers right after this.
More than 120 billion zlotys, or $4 billion. This impressive amount has been spent by Poland on aid to Ukraine since the start of the full-scale invasion. This includes both humanitarian and military support.
Poland was one of the first countries to supply Ukraine with tanks, ammunition, and defense equipment on a large scale. In 2022 to 2023, it supplied, in particular, more than 300 tanks, as well as armored personnel carriers, artillery systems, air defense systems, drones, mortars, assault rifles, and over 100 million rounds of ammunition. 10 airplanes and 10 helicopters were also sent to Ukraine. Between 2022 and 2024, Poland delivered 47 packages of military aid to Ukraine. The value of the equipment delivered in 2022 alone amounted to 7.23 billion zlotys, and in 2023 to 2024, an additional 5.63 billion. Poland also supplied more than 19,500 Starlink terminals, providing the Ukrainian armed forces with stable satellite communication. This accounted for almost half of all terminals used in Ukraine by the end of 2023.
Poland's assistance to Ukraine is not the result of romantic enthusiasm, but is very pragmatic. Our neighbors understand that if Ukraine falls, Poland will be next in line.
After all, a Ukraine at war gives Europe time to better prepare for threats. This time is needed, and we have no right to waste a single minute. We will be held accountable for every minute.
318 tanks were delivered to Kyiv by Warsaw. Among them were modernized T-72s, M1Rs, PT-91s, and Leopard 2S. This is more than anyone else has supplied. The total value of gratuitous aid, including training, logistics, repairs, and medical support, exceeded $4 billion by March of this year. Specifically, in 2022 it amounted to 1.6 billion, and in 2023 to 2024, 1.3 billion. Poland also supplied
military aid from Poland, 586 armored vehicles, 137 artillery systems, 10 Mi-24 helicopters, 10 MiG-29 fighter jets, 287 man-portable air defense systems, 44 air-to-air missiles, more than 100 units of small arms, 89 mortars, 4 Grad multiple rocket launch systems, and over 100 million rounds of ammunition.
In addition to gratuitous aid, in just 2022 to 2023, Ukraine purchased weapons from Poland worth more than 2.2 billion euros. The largest contract was a deal for 54 self-propelled Crab howitzers. Of these, 36 have already been delivered. The countries are establishing joint production of weapons and equipment. The parties have agreed on the joint production of 125mm tank ammunition. There are also plans for joint production of other weapons and military equipment, including the placement of Polish company manufacturing facilities in Ukraine.
It is necessary to mobilize the industry. Polish and Ukrainian industries should make joint investments not only during the war, but also to develop their deterrence potential. These initiatives are very much needed. It is also very important for us to improve economic relations. We will support Ukraine.
Poland has become the main hub for supplying weapons to Ukraine. Also, during the war, more than 30,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been trained on Polish territory. With each year of the war, the assistance and joint cooperation between Poland and Ukraine only grows stronger.
Russia is a terrorist state and Putin is today's bin Laden. The entire civilized world must finally admit it. The security service of Ukraine has foiled a series of terrorist attacks in Kyiv planned by the FSB. The organizer, a Crimean resident recruited by Russian intelligence in 2014, sent an agent to Kyiv to carry out the attacks. The man was supposed to retrieve a Makarov pistol from a cache and assassinate a well-known media figure, then detonate explosives in a shopping mall and several metro stations during rush hour. That's all for now. Thank you for being with us. Subscribe to the channel and give this video a like so more people can hear the truth. And please guys, let us know what country you're watching from and whether you support Ukraine in our fight for freedom. See you next time and glory to Ukraine.